What's going on, everybody? It's Pelfrey. This is the Red Sea Reefer 250. I'm going to do a quick update. Got some things done on the tank today. I'll just go ahead and jump right into it. Unfortunately, I am seeing some SPS loss. You know, it's the revolving door, and that door is definitely greased up and it's revolving pretty well. You know, there's who knows. I actually thought that maybe the lights were a little too intense. They were going up to like 64%, so I dropped the Kessels down to about 54%. They run at 54% for about 6 hours, and that's the T5 schedule as well, 6 hours. So, you know, unfortunately, the SPS woes continue in this tank. Now, you know, it's quite interesting because there's no sponges, there's no microfauna, there's nothing in this tank, and I'm still dosing nitrates. I do have, whenever I test for it, I use the Red Sea High Range test kit now, and I do get very faint colors, which tells me that it's at least a 4. So I did dose another 40 milliliters of nitrate in the tank. Phosphates come and go. You know, one day they might be 0.04, and then the next day they might be 0. So I'm checking these things, and I'm testing phosphates and nitrates on a regular basis. And I did remove 2 of the lights out of the Rain 2 algae scrubber, and I reduced the light cycle on it, and I continue to reduce the light cycle on it because obviously it really doesn't make a lot of sense to dose nutrients in the tank if you're going to have nutrient export like a algae turf scrubber. So I am battling that. I do have some, I guess, small diatom bloom going on in the tank, as ironic as that sounds, and that's simply because I have the there's brand new dry rock in the sump. So I think I'm going to go ahead and look at maybe KB Aquatics at their live rock. I would still have to cycle it outside of this tank just because it would be shipped to me. I may look into maybe a couple of places that are semi-local. I say semi-local, so within a couple hours of driving distance to me, to get some live rock to throw into the sump. And then Reef Girl made a very awesome, and you know, it's something that I did not even think about. The reason that I have the dry rock in the sump was originally I was going to use a piece of dry rock to seed some new rock to replace the right rock structure. And one of the comments that I think were in my last video, Reef Girl said, why don't you just glue or putty small ledges to the right rock structure? And I never even thought about doing that. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I've got that rock still in the sump, and I've got a couple of pieces of rubble in the sump. So whenever the time comes and I need to do something to that right rock structure, that's what I'm going to do exactly. I'm going to glue little ledges onto that rock structure. So thank you very much for the comment. I do appreciate it because, again, it's something that I never even thought about. So let's move the cell phone around a little bit, get some different video, just take a look in general. This mushroom was to the right of the tank, and I actually moved it to probably about the middle of the tank just because of how big it's gotten, and it was starting to stretch out onto another rock, and I do not want to have that problem. These mushrooms have exploded over the last couple weeks, and they're just looking really crazy. And if we take a look at this other guy, you can see he's got a little baby there. So let's take a look at some of the frags that everybody's wondering about. We'll start over here. So this piece is doing so. Then we move over. That piece there in the middle actually still looks good and has great polyp extension. There's a piece just right there that's got some white tips on it. This piece is actually doing pretty good. This piece, the base of it still looks good, but the white tips, it's definitely not doing so hot. Again, with this piece over here, the same thing. So if we move over to the left side of the tank, it is pretty much a boneyard again over here now. I do have the MP10 back there, and it goes up to about probably halfway. So, you know, these corals should be getting enough flow, but they all have white tips and they're just not doing good in general. And if we scroll down here, of course, the hammers are doing okay. And I know I've discussed this Monty cap before, but it was all but gone and then come back, and here's another cap here. So yeah, you know, it's definitely a trying time in the Red Sea Reefer. Sorry about the glare there. Of course, the Scully, this thing's been with me for a very long time. So you can see you can't see it, but there's some brown algae buildup on the gyre pump there. I did get the Tunze strong carrier magnet in this week, and that thing is pretty sweet. The equipment cabinet is a complete mess. I'm aware of it. I did get the second dose installed, and then I just threw the breakout box on top of it. So what we have here is alkalinity, acro power, calcium, and kalkwasser. So, you know, obviously, whenever I started looking at dosers, I went with the Coral Box Wi-Fi doser, and it was a good doser. I had no issues with it, but I like to have new technology and play with things. So, of course, I got the dose. This pump just ran for a second. I actually looked at the GHL 2.1 doser, and I decided after reading just some of the complaints about getting it set up out of the box, I decided I'd go with the Neptune dose, and I'm very satisfied and very happy that I did. I set this one up, so this was the first one obviously. I set this one up in about 15 minutes, and then I set this one up, had both pumps calibrated in 2 or 3 minutes. So it's very, very simple. And I should go ahead and say that since I'm using the Apex Classic, setting these up and calibrating them has to be done on the old Apex dashboard. So, you know, with the new Apex, I don't think you have to go that far into it. But the only downside to the situation that I have now is they have their own power, and it's supplied by this cable here. So I decided that I would actually bid on a 1-link module on eBay, because these will run off one link module, and if I get the 1-link module, that will take out 2 power cords. But you know, the equipment cabinet has been and will be a mess. You know, a lesson learned. If I ever got a bigger tank, I would definitely have a bigger equipment cabinet. So, and I think it's worth mentioning, that's a battery backup. And then I have a plastic shield here so that the kids can't unplug anything. But of course that takes up half of the cabinet. And then on the inside of the wall here, we got the MP10 controller, the auto top off controller, the FMM module, the Core 20, and then the Gyre controller, the Apex display behind it, which I don't even use. So, you know, I would like to have the new Apex, but there's no way I would get the Apex power bar inside of here. So, you know, and maybe sometime down the road I'll look at maybe the Apex EL, but right now I am using the VDM ports to control the Kessels. So the VDM ports are nice to have for me anyway. Taking a look into the sump area, now all 3 of the dosing bottles are hooked up. I actually have the kalkwasser behind the stand in a BRS Slim jug. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen that. But I did add some new carbon to the reactor today, and I did add a small Siche power head down here. So I do run 2 power heads in the sump. I run a small Sun power head in the return chamber just to keep everything in there suspended. And I added the Siche pump over here, which has a little bit more flow than the Sun pump, and the Siche pumps are silent. And every once in a while, the Sun pump will set on the glass and kind of vibrate a little bit. And I prefer everything to be silent. From time to time, the Nile skimmer lid does make some vibration noise, but it's pretty easy to deal with. Obviously, you can see the rock rubble that's in the sump area that's kind of messing with the display now. But that's that, folks. I mean, as far as the sump area is concerned, I'm glad that I have the satellite equipment cabinet. I could not imagine having all that equipment from the equipment cabinet under the tank. There is absolutely no way that I could do that. So it's still kind of messy under here, but it works for me. Just taking a look behind the tank, that is the BRS jug. So I mixed 2 teaspoons with 1 gallon of roti and ran that over to the doser. And that's the other thing that I like about the Neptune dose, is that it can push and pull water from great distances. So it's definitely not going to have an issue pulling water from this reservoir, considering it's 3-4 feet away. So it fit behind the stand perfectly. It'll stay out of the way. I'm going to definitely monitor pH on how much I'm dosing, and I do have the pH alert set to alert me if pH goes to 8, just because the highest my pH has ever been according to the Apex is 7.9. So at 8, I'll definitely get an alert, and then I can do whatever I need to at that point. So I probably do need to do some advanced programming on that dose head to begin with. The T5s actually just went off, so that means that the Kessels will start ramping down shortly. That about wraps it up for this update. Let me know where you would get some live rock from. Should I try to source it locally to prevent less die-off? My problem with doing that is I don't know how long that live rock has actually been inside their tank. So, they could have just got it in and threw it in the tank, called it live rock, raised the price on it. With KB Aquatics, I think they pull that out of the ocean and they do overnight shipping. I think I can get 10 pounds for like $109. So that might be the direction I go. I understand I'll have to cycle it separately, but yeah, I do need to work on this. I do have some new mounting hardware for the light fixture. I'm gonna try to clean this up a little bit. And I would like to maybe sometime later down the road build a canopy that just sits on top of there to block everything out. And real quick, this is the wet side of the flipper magnet. You can see there's a starfish there and a small bristleworm. So the reason why I'm adding this in there into the video is because I didn't touch it. I've not touched a bristleworm. I know that I have them. I don't really mind them because they do a pretty good job of cleaning up the tank for me. But just be careful, folks. And there's a small piece of bubble algae right in the middle of the frame. And as always, I do appreciate all the comments and helping me along on this journey. I appreciate you staying and watching and following along as I fail miserably over and over again. But, I keep chugging along, and one day I'm going to get there. Probably a high percentage of people probably would have given up by now, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. So be sure to check me out on Instagram if you're on Instagram at Pelfrey's Reef. Check out the website at pelfrey.net. I'll see you on the next one.